We are going to try to teach you a little bit about scripting. First off, though, we want to know how many people are familiar with even just a little bit of scripting in C#.
Like, not even like that.
Okay, so just an idea, this is mostly going to cover the basics, just to get you your feet wet in Unity with scripting. You're gonna, at the end of this, we're hoping to get you to be able to get like a cube or a character to move around, like around the scene. That's.
Is this gonna be 2D or 3D?
It'll be 3D.
Yes.
Yep.
Ow.
So that's the end goal. So another question: who does not have a login for this lab? Does anyone not have a login? Can anyone not log into the computers here? No? Cool. All right. So it isn't kind of an interactive demo, so you guys can log in and open up Unity. We are going to start from scratch, so you guys can follow along. Okay, let's first talk about what C# is. C# is an object-oriented programming language, which means that you create objects, kind of they're called classes, which have descriptions and attributes and a whole bunch of other things. We'll get into the class things a little bit later, but yeah, it also, I already said it was beginner. Cool. I'm going to erase this. Anyone need this still? No? Okay. Start over here.
Can you just open Unity on a laptop?
Yeah, just open up Unity. Pretty cool, doesn't it? So, I want to switch that over. Like, I think it's Alt F2. First off, in order to really start with scripting, you need to know how to store numbers and variables and all these other fun things, which give you the ability to define how fast something moves, or just basic. You tell the computer how to do things. So we have what's called variables. And different names for them, and they're anything from int, string, float, a bool, which is also short for boolean. An integer is any whole number from 1, or any whole number from basically 1, 2, 3, -1, -2, -3. There's no decimal values. So 1, 2, -1, -5. Any sort of any range of that. A string is a collection of characters, like letters. So a popular one is "Hello World." A float is a number with a decimal value. So 1.3, 1.572, pi 3.14, whatever. Any decimal value can be stored, and negatives can be stored too, so any one of those could also be negative. A boolean is true or false. Yeah, that's horrible. Handwriting is a little bad sometimes. And there are others. Another popular one is an array, which is just a list of integers, strings, floats, booleans, etc., etc.
Or objects.
Or objects. It could store objects as well. All right. That covers. Anyone have any questions about what variables are? No. Okay. But these by themselves don't do a whole lot. They just store data. They're just basically a descriptor. They're like, hey, I'm a number. What kind of number I'm a float number. I can store decimal values and stuff. But you really want to do something with those. And in order to do something with those, you generally set up conditions. So when or if I do something, then do something else. So that kind of looks like this. And there's a specific syntax that you have to write in order for the code to run properly. And syntax is just another fancy way of saying grammar. So if programming is learning like Spanish or another language, syntax is the grammar of that language to make sure that the computer can understand what you're saying. So it kind of looks like this. So an if statement, if the condition. So I don't know. What's a good variable? Sure. X is not equal to y, and not equal is defined with an exclamation point. In that's a little interesting. Or if x is greater, let's see, greater than y.
You should explain the assignment versus evaluation.
Oh yeah, like the equal sign.
Double
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. So if you want to check to see if something is the same number, so if you wanted to say if x is equal to y, you actually have to do a double equal sign, and that means the same as. So if x is equal to y, you're going to run something. An example of that is if we have an integer, say my int, and this is just the name of the integer. So you define this and you say is equal to 1, and then if x is equal to y, you can change my int equal to 2, or whatever. It would automatically, in the code, after it was running, it would check this, and if this was true, then this would be true now. And it would set this now equal to 2. I'm going to show you an example of how this is going to work kind of in Unity, because it's really fun to see things move as an example. It makes a lot more sense when you see a result, not just numbers and letters on a whiteboard. So we'll do that. You shouldn't need anything special. It's just the basic stuff. So if you open up Unity and make a new scene, you can pretty much call it whatever you want. I called mine demo scene, but I'll just make a new script. So you can right click in this project window, this little thing I have selected right here. It's kind of hidden over there, but this project window has a whole bunch of, it's just going to be empty. I created a folder to hold my scripts and everything else in it, so I can just do it at here. It doesn't really matter. Oops. Create.
When you actually start doing some sort of a project, organization is really huge in your project outliner there. If you start to make a bunch of scripts and import different assets in there and you're not organizing them, then your project's going to be a mess, and before you know it, you're not going to be able to find anything. So.
Yep. Okay, I just made a script called MyScript, and then if you double click on it, it opens what's called MonoDevelop, and MonoDevelop is an editor. It basically allows you to edit your scripts. It's the default package. It comes with Unity automatically. You can use a whole bunch of different types. I mean, you can just honestly write all your scripts out into a text document, and if you know that everything's spelled correctly and everything's correct, then it will run it. But MonoDevelop helps solve a lot of the common issues that you would have with scripts. So I'm going to go over kind of what you get when you start a new script. These right here, these top two lines, are libraries of other scripts that just help the script run. So we're using a Unity-specific library that allows us to do things with things that you'd see in a game, like move objects and game objects, and just things that Unity uses specifically. And then the system collections is just a collection of scripts that are very basic in C# that allow us to use C# specific things. This line right here is saying I'm making a new script. It's basically your class right here, and I'm going to call it my script. And so if these two names are different, it's not going to read it. So your name of your script has to match the class.
So for example, if you created a script and called it my script, and then you went back into the project outliner in Unity and changed the name, your script isn't going to run because in the project it's called one thing and on the script it's called something else.
All right, cool. So see, right here where this line says use this for initialization, this is where you can write in variables.
Wait, is that a comment line now?
Yeah, you don't want to write inside the comment line. But that's just giving you, so when it's grayed out like this, it just means it's there for reading purposes as a reference. So it's just telling you I can write variables here. So if I wanted to create a new int, or a new string. Let's do hello world, because that's the common one, and I'll do it public just because that allows me to edit it later outside of the script. So public string, and then I have to give it a name. So let's see, what am I going to give it? I'm going to call it hello, and then I can set it equal to hello world. I'll capitalize it. We'll do it right. Hello world. I guess that's not right. World. Cool. That's proper. Oh yeah, I need a semicolon. At the end of every line after you give a command, you have to put a semicolon for when you're defining a string or you're calling something else. That lets the translator that it uses to know that you're done with this line, and it doesn't need to continue reading this command. So I'm going to have it print. I'm going to call it, this is a function that's built into system.collections, I believe. Print, and I can say hello. And that name, hello, is the same name as the string I created. So I do print.hello and then put a semicolon and save this script. I can go into Unity, and then you'll want to, is everybody here at this point? Does anyone need to catch up?
Are there any spaces in that declaration of the variable?
Do you need me to show you the script here? Okay, I need to create an object for it to read from. So there's nothing, there's no, the script is not attached anyway to Unity whatsoever. So I'm just going to create an empty game object here, and that just has it's just a completely empty game object, and I'm going to drag it into this area right here, so it appears on the game object, and I can name this whatever I want. I can name it player if I wanted to. Is everybody at this point? There's nothing there. It's completely empty. Right. Maybe. Do you know what the command is? Just okay. Is there any spot that you needed to see in specific?
No, just in general.
Okay. Okay. That's going to be interesting. Okay, I'll use this when I'm writing the script so you guys can read the scripts easier. Is there anyone else need to catch up to where we're at? Okay. Yes. Let's see, I think I can zoom in. Oh. Is that close enough, or do you guys need? Oh, whoa. Okay, it's very sensitive.
Can you move the magnifying glass back there?
I don't know, maybe.
Just move it up to the top. There you go.
Okay. So the idea behind doing this is just to test. And the idea is to get the game to print, to give us a little text that says hello world. So we know that this script is actually doing something in the game. Let me know if anybody needs help to get to this point. Collins can walk around, or I can walk around. Once we're done, I want to show you the result. So.
There are a lot of Steam games that have been made with Unity.
Yeah, plenty.
Am I good to go back? Cool. All right. Back to Unity.
Can you do Control Plus and make it bigger?
I can't. Like it won't let me do anything in Unity.
No, I mean in Mono.
I don't know. I think that you can definitely zoom in somehow. View, zoom in.
Yeah, do that.
Okay.
That way, I can see it. Yeah, keep going. Maybe one or two more.
It's so bad, it's fun.
Just Control Plus. I thought I clicked that. Is that good? You guys read that? Okay. All right. So if you want to test your game to see what happens when you run, you click this little play button here on the top. And we're going to go to our console here. And this is what prints Unity.
Did you
prints.
attach it to a game object?
I did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
You
called
might
it
want to
player.
mention that then.
I did earlier.
Oh, okay.
So did you guys? Okay, let's read. Let me back up. So what I did is I went to the project. I took this script that I created, my script, and then I dragged it over to an empty game object. And I can create an empty game object by going up to this game object menu and clicking Create Empty. And that just creates an empty game object, and you can name it. You can do a whole bunch of things with this menu. We'll be using it later to create cubes, spheres. It can do a lot of fun things for us. So once you've created an empty game object and named it something aside from game object, because you're gonna if you just leave it game object, you won't know which game object you're selecting. And you can just drag your script over to the inspect. This is called the inspector, and then it will add the script there. So if I click play and then go to my console, it prints out hello world down here, and that's how I know that my script has printed correctly. The great thing is, if we made our string public, as you can see here in our script, we have this little hello variable, and it says hello world. We can change this to goodbye, and then run the game. And then now it's going to say goodbye. So our game just said hello and goodbye. So that's useful if you need to change things and you don't want to change the script per se. Okay. So I'm going to go over what this is, because this is very important. This is called a function. A function is a list of commands that you tell a computer, and the computer knows, oh, I'm going to do all these commands in sequence. So if I created another public string, goodbye is equal to goodbye, capital goodbye, exclamation point. Don't forget the semicolon at the end of that. I can go down here and do another print, and I can say goodbye. And don't forget to Control S for save. Okay, is everybody ready to move on? Okay, so now when it's going to update, now I have two things. They both say goodbye. I'm going to reset this to say hello world. And then if I press play, it says both. It says hello world and goodbye at the same time. So they're not separate anymore. But it's no fun to just say hello and goodbye. Like, it just automatically spits out hello and goodbye. We want the game to only say hello, goodbye when we press a button. So we're going to create one of those if statements and make it so if you press a button, print hello. And if you press a different button, goodbye. And I'm going to do that like this. I'm going to write if, and then open parenthesis, close parenthesis. Inside this, I'm going to write a code called input, and there's a dot get key, there's a get button.
So it could be get key.
It is get key down, and then you have to do another parentheses, and then you have to tell it what key it is. So there's a key code that you have to write in. So key code dot, let's see, let's do H for hello. And then we're also going to want to do an open bracket and a close bracket.
So really quickly. So what he's doing here, we've got an if statement, and then inside the if statement, this input dot get key down, the get key down is a function. So he's calling a function that's checking for a key pressed down. So meaning that when you actually press the key down once, it's going to check for whatever key you tell it to check. And that's what all these, whenever you see a dot something, it means you're calling some sort of function or variable. And functions are always, they always either, even if they don't take some sort of parameter, in this case it's the key code, they're always going to have the open and close parentheses after them.
So if it's just regular, it's going to look like that.
What are the curly brackets for?
Curly brackets are, I'm going to put my instructions inside those to tell it what to do after I press the button down. So I'm going to move this print statement right here that says hello. I'm going to cut it and I'm going to paste it inside there. I know, I'm gonna move it. And then also, see how I have this in start? Well, start only runs once at the very beginning of the game. And if we're in the game longer than, millisecond, then it's never going to actually check it. So we have to move all of this into update. So we're gonna want to select all of that and cut it and paste it into update. X.
And you can see right there, they've commented by default what update does. It's called once per frame. So basically, if you have this if statement in here, it's going to check every frame for if this key is pressed, print hello right now.
Also, if you leave print goodbye by itself without any kind of conditions at all, it's just going to print goodbye every frame. So it's gonna be printing it like 300 times. And I'll show that to you right now because it's kind of fun to see it print a lot. So if we press H, it will say hello, and then otherwise it's just gonna keep printing goodbye. So I'm gonna clear this and then I'm gonna press play here. Oh, look at all the goodbyes. See all the goodbyes? It's already done 200 something right there. If I press collapse, it will collapse all of those into just one thing. But if I press H while I'm inside, if I clicked on the game panel, every time I press H, it will print hello world.
So you can see that counter
Going up. Let me use the magnifying glass here.
But how do you get it to stop printing goodbye?
It won't. It won't right now because
You just collapse.
yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah, I pressed this button, collapse. It's still printing. I just collapsed it all, so it's just printing it on one because it's the same exact thing.
So you see that counter next to it if you collapse it?
So there's it right here, collapse. And then it's printing goodbye like 2,000 times already. We don't need to print goodbye that many times.
Once we've got a lot of people to say goodbye to.
Then we can use other things to only say goodbye to those people. Goodbye, goodbye. Yeah. Okay.
Maybe it's a party. Maybe like
They will leave. All right. Cool. Well, now, oops, I don't need to
really
open that.
quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
So with that goodbye printing over and over and over again, it's kind of a good demonstration of why update can be cumbersome on the computer. So optimally, you want your code not necessarily to be called every frame depending on the situation. If you're checking for key inputs, that's good because we want to be checking as often as we can for the player to put some input in. But if we say we have some sort of thing where we create something, we don't necessarily want to check every frame for that.
Yeah, because it's going to create an object every frame.
Which is really heavy on the computer. So just something to keep in mind when you're programming.
Eventually, it will crash your computer because it's never going to stop. But it's going to take a long time with just one if statement. But if you have a lot of code running and you're creating objects and Unity's running and you have over a billion cubes, your computer's going to start to slow down so much. So anyway, cool. So now if you want to stop that from printing, you can actually, use a shortcut. We can copy that and paste that. And now we can just change this key code to whatever else you want. I'm going to say G for goodbye. And I'm going to delete the hello. And then I can put the goodbye in there. And if you save that and you run that and you press G and you press H, it will only print goodbye and hello on G and H. All right, but now we want to get to the fun stuff, right? We want to actually get things moving, and that's a whole nother ballpark. So, well, it's very similar. We're going to use input.keyDown, but we're going to also use a couple other things.
Is everyone up to speed at this point?
Does anyone have any questions up to now about any of the variables or how an if statement works? No? Okay.
To hit save.
Yeah, you can save after every time you want to make a change. Otherwise, you'll be going back and forth.
I don't know what you press, like, lets it print once, no matter how much time you push the key.
You can.
Is the counter going up on the right?
Did you put it in the update function or is it stuck?
Yeah, it was collapsed, that's why.
Okay. So now I'm going to create a 3D object. We're going to create a cube or a sphere if you want a sphere. Doesn't really matter too much. But if you create a cube, you can look on your inspector and see that it has some scripts and some objects already in here. It has a box collider. It has a mesh renderer. And if you turn off the mesh renderer, you see it kind of goes invisible. So we kind of want that on. And you can add more scripts to this as much, to just like any other game object, you can add scripts to it.
What?
Oh, okay, light source.
The cube is dark.
Yeah, so see how the cube is dark right now? It's black. It's because I don't have a light source in here. If I create I think it's a directional light, it lights up my scene.
Or is it the default light?
The newest version of Unity doesn't default to a camera or a light source. So if you don't have yeah, and they mostly will, but the newest one doesn't. So, yeah. So if you don't have a camera or a directional light in your scene, you can just add one in, and it will be fine. Yeah, I know, it's wonderful, right? Okay. Now our cube's pretty boring right now. It's not going to do anything when you press play. It's just going to stand there. Hello, cube. So we want it to do stuff. And in order to get it moving, you have to add what's called a rigid body. So we're going to add a component. We're going to search for rigid body. And just make sure you select the regular one, not the 2D one.
Now hit play.
Yep. And now if you click play.
Bye-bye. Wait.
What'd you do?
I hit goodbye.
Oh, you hit goodbye. Goodbye. Yep. That was good. All right. So the reason why it does that is because we have this little use gravity checkbox on. And we don't have anything to stop the cube from moving. So we can also create another game object. We'll create a plane, and then we can move that below the cube, and then that should stop it, I think, because it has a mesh collider. There it is. It stopped. But we still can't control the cube at all, and we want to move the cube.
But we've solved a good problem, so we have a cube that has something to stand on, and that's the basis for our character moving around.
Yep. And there's gravity. So gravity does exist in this game. So eventually you could add a jump if you wanted to. All right, let's go back to our script. Actually, let's make a new script. You can use your old one as reference if you need to. But we're going to create a new script, and we're going to call it move. And I'm just going to create it in the same area that we got here. I already used that. Let me change mine. I'm going to create mine move object. Okay. Move object. You can name it whatever you want, as long as it doesn't overwrite an existing name. If you use the same name, it can have a conflict. All right, so we're not going to really use start right now because we want to use update. We want to check for when we press a button. And luckily we have something that does that already. So if we grab the if input.getKeyDown script and copy that, we can paste that into update into our new move object script. But see how it's red right here? It's because we don't have anything that says hello. We don't have a string that's called hello in this script. So it's not going to know what to print. We're actually not even going to need it to print hello in here. We can just delete that. We're also not going to want the object to move when you press H, because H is a weird key in the middle of the keyboard. We want it to move when you press the left arrow key. So if you delete that H and the dot and you push dot again, you can write left arrow. And there's a left arrow. So now if we press the left arrow button down, something will happen when we press that button down. So the idea is that we attach this move object script onto our box. So we can use a fun little thing called this. This will reference the object that the script is attached to. So if I go this dot game object, so I want to grab the game object that's on there, dot get component, because we added a rigid body component. And we want to do these little arrow brackets. Rigid. I see this R-I-D. There it is, right there. Rigid body. So we're going to get the component called rigid body, and this component, this rigid body, has a whole bunch of other scripts attached to it that we can use, because it's kind of a list of functions. So if I do the brackets and the period, it gives me all the list of functions that I can add to rigid body. And we're going to want to add velocity. You can also add force if you want to add force, but velocity is easier to deal with. So let's do velocity.
Just really quickly, the get component function is something really important to remember when you're trying to access some sort of component that's on this game object. Because otherwise, if you try to access something without the get component, the script is not going to know where to find it or whatever. It's not going to find it.
It's not going to know if you just type in rigid body what to do with that rigid body. You have to tell it to get the rigid body from a certain location, and then it will know. I'm going to introduce you guys to a new variable type. It's called a vector. Now we're going to use a vector 3. And vector 3s are just an XYZ coordinate. So it's just going to take in a variable like 1, 2, or no, we're going to use vector 3. Yeah. 1, 2, and 3. And it's going to correspond to X, Y, and Z. I hope velocity, I think velocity uses vector 3. I hope it does. I think it was a vector 2 that I used in the last one. We'll try vector, well, I know vector 2 will work, it's just, yeah, we'll try it. Okay, velocity is equal to new, or no, we don't even have to say new, because there's a vector 3 variable already created for us, dot, and then I can have it move, there's a thing called back, which says it's 0, 0, -1, so it's going to move negative x. Let's see, if we go to Unity, we can see which direction the camera is facing. The camera is this way. So I want it to move in the positive x, or no, the negative x direction when I press the left arrow key. That will make it go, if I select this, it will make it go this way. So,
also, if you guys aren't sure what some of these things that pop up in this menu do, it describes it in that little pop-up box. So you can see right here, left is described as shorthand for writing vector 3, -1, 0, 0.
And it's great because you don't have to make a new variable for this. If you write new and you want to make like a new variable that's like -10, 3, 20, then you have to actually write that out. Or you initialize a vector 3 up here saying public vector or private vector 3. You tell it what it's equal to. And I'm going to finish writing this out. Vector 3.left. And then don't forget the semicolon, because we are telling the game to do a command. And once you get to this point, make sure you save it. and then you can grab your move object script over to your cube. And once you've done that, you can press play, and then you can press the left button. But see, we run into a little bit of a problem. Gravity is really strong.
And it's on get key down.
Yep.
So it's only when you press
Yep. Right. But so we can either do one of two things. We can either turn gravity off, or we can make vector 3 bigger. I'm going to turn gravity off just to show you what it would do if you turn gravity off. There it goes.
Mine says
Goodbye.
vector 3 doesn't exist in the context. Did I have to declare vector 3 to be already?
You should. Okay, I'm going to move this down a little bit so you can see it inside the game. And you can switch to this awesome little game view up here. I don't know if you can see my mouse. There's a little view. That will show you the camera that you're looking through. So you can see where the objects are in your game. I think it's a little bit too close to the left side. So let's see where it pops up. Okay, that's good. So if I press left now, just once, it just will continue going because there's no gravity pulling it down. It's not going to stop. There's nothing going to stop it. So we actually do want it to stop. If we let go of that key, we want it to stop moving, right? Because we only want it to move left when we press left down. So it's going to be a very similar to this if input.key down. So I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it, but instead of down, there's one that's called get key up. If you read it here, it says return true during the frame the user releases the key. So if I do get key up and left arrow, and then change this, and so instead of adding another one, it's vector 3.0, so it's nothing, it's just 0, 0, 0, and then save. Let's see what happens now. Yay! I can control it going left. But now it only can move left. You want it to move in every direction possible. You don't want it to move backwards and forwards and upwards and every way that the glass elevator can move in Willy Wonka, right? And that just takes time. We've got to create a conditional for every arrow. So you can copy this and change left arrow to right arrow, and then left to right. This 0 is gonna stay the same because when you let go of the key, you want it to stay. So go ahead and copy that. For basically, you're gonna copy it 3 times. There's a lot of if statements there. And separate it out a little bit. Change this one to right arrow. Change this to right. And change this to right arrow because it needs to check that right. Then up arrow. Up. Down arrow. Down arrow. Okay, let's see. So we got moving right, we're going to move, I changed this one to move back, so that's going to move in the negative, and we'll move up to move forward. Positive. So I just, I use the back and the forward. You can also use up and down, but down's not really going to do anything because you're going to be stuck in the ground. Up will just kind of push you up. It's not going to be really a jump, but you can try it to see what happens if you want. Or you can set up to a different key. If you want to try putting that the space bar, you can have an up very. Actually, I'll do that. I'll make this space bar. Space bar. Space. It's just space. Cool. All right. Now that I'm done with that, I can go back to Unity here, Just make sure it loads, and then press play. And then I can move to the left. I can move to the right. I can move backwards by pressing down. I can move forwards by pressing up, and then I can go upwards by pressing spacebar. But it doesn't go back down because I don't have anything to go back down, so it's gone again. That's where gravity comes into play, but it gets stuck on this object, so you can fix that by making it stronger, but it's alright. Does anyone have any questions about how to get this object to move or anything about this that they want to learn specifically about scripting? There's a great resource online. Unity has done a really good job at making their own dictionary for their code libraries and everything. So if you don't know what a vector 3 is, you can highlight it and press Control Quote. What that does, it will open a web browser to Unity's documentation and pop up basically exactly what a vector 3 is and every variable that's located in it. So you know how I knew that back, down, forward, left, 1, right, up, and 0 were? You can it all right here. So Control Quote is going to be your best friend while you learn how to use scripting in Unity, because Unity is going to be able to tell you everything. Excuse me, everything you need to know. And if you don't know that's something in here, you know, that you want to learn, you can type it up here in the scripting. Like if you don't know what a input does, you can type in input, and there's input. Yeah. The double.
This one?
Yes. It's right next to the enter key. Is that not working?
This comes up.
Oh, you're in Visual Studio. Okay. So that's the reason why we've been using MonoDevelop, which is fun because this is just another scripting platform.
Okay, this is the one that pops up automatically.
Yeah, that's okay. Unity likes that. So we can change its default. I don't want to. Well, you've got your scripts in the project, right?
Yeah.
Your project window right here. Okay, that's fine. So we can change. I'm going to show this up on top. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Okay. If there's a program called Visual Studio, which is just another editor, like I was talking about, and if that opened up for you, Unity is sometimes set to default that way, and you can change that by going to your project settings. I think it's under here, Edit, Project Settings. No, wait, it might not be Project Settings. Preferences. You go to Edit, Preferences, and you go to this External Tools button, and then you can change this to MonoDevelop. So it will look for your external script editor, and you'll select MonoDevelop, because MonoDevelop is kind of Unity's built-in scripting editor. It works really well with using scripts meant for games.
Another thing you can do, go to colors, right there.
Oh yeah, colors.
And where it says play mode tint, change that to like a dark green, and then it'll be easier to see when you're in play mode.
Yeah, yep. It's very useful too, because if you're in play mode and you change something, it won't say the changes when you leave play mode. So it's good for testing. Like, you know the string that I made, hello world? If I changed that while it was playing, it would revert back to hello world at the end if I changed it to whatever else. So that's nice to know that you're in play mode. But make sure that you're in MonoDevelop. Did you get that? Did that work?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
And now you should be able to double click on a script and press Control Quote.
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right. Anyone else want to learn anything else about anything in particular? Questions? Oh, I should go over functions, huh? I think functions are important. Let's see, anything else? Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about scripts here. A little bit more. So we have start and we have update. But what if we want our own thing to happen? We don't want it to start when it starts. We don't want it to start when it updates. We want it to happen, after we've pressed a button, and then we want it to print hello outside of everything else. So we can create our own functions. In order to do that, you see this void keyword? That's what kind of it tells Unity, hey, I want to make my own function. So I write void, and you give it whatever name you want. I'm going to name it my function. And you have to put these parentheses. You can put variables inside those parentheses.